So the ultimate legacy of the DC Extended Universe is one of disappointment, as it honestly had so much unrealized potential, and they just could have done so much more with all of the brilliant actors that they had, all of the brilliant storylines that they had, and the wicked universe that they were building. But unfortunately, for so many different reasons, it was just riddled with so much drama, which just overshadowed the end product, unfortunately. So let's rank all 16 final DCEU movies. So in at number 16 is of course the Justice League version by Joss Whedon, which was just so criminal in and of itself. The fact that Zack Snyder, for very sad circumstances, had to temporarily leave the project, but then Warner Brothers brought in Joss Whedon, who was then just fired from Marvel Studios to basically remake the movie in a completely different way. And in turn, it just had so much mixed dialogue, a lot of cringe dialogue, a lot of scenes that were just so over the place in terms of from a tonal perspective, that the end product was just so disappointing. Next, I'm going to put Birds of Prey. Now, whilst this movie definitely did have some cool moments in there, I feel like it just came out at the wrong time, as the original plan was first to do a Harley Quinn and Joker-centric movie, and then have her off doing something else. But of course, all of the drama that once again took place with Jared Leto meant that they changed their plans and then just broke up Harley Quinn and the Joker off screen. And whilst his was definitely referenced, and you definitely could feel the Joker's presence in the Birds of Prey movie, I just think for those reasons, it was just a little bit messed up. And actually, I think even if they had gone down the Gotham Sirens route, then the team up would have been so much better. And even though Ewan McGregor was good as Black Mask, I feel like just the overall storyline in this movie was just really, really disappointing. Next, I'm going to put Wonder Woman 1984. Now, also, this movie definitely did have some cool moments in there, but they just made so many mistakes. Patty Jenkins in particular just ruined this film, as it was just super cringeworthy, and they just did so many questionable things in this movie that ultimately I just feel like the legacy of Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman is now a bit of a joke. But she at least made some cameo appearances in both Shazam! Fury of the Gods and The Flash, so she did somewhat redeem her character. Next, I'm going to put Suicide Squad, so hopefully one day we'll get the David Ayer cut of this movie, but I feel like what did get released, you could just tell that the studio just interfered with it so much, as firstly it was just really mixed from a tonal perspective, and I just feel like they just did not use Enchantress properly, as she doesn't feel like a Suicide Squad type villain. David Ayer has definitely redeemed his directorial ability, as he did a really, really good job with The Beekeeper, so hopefully we'll get to see his version of Suicide Squad coming out one day. Next, I'm going to put Wonder Woman, so I think a lot of people are going to be surprised that it's quite low down, but I actually think that this movie is so overrated. I mean, I personally am not the biggest fan of historic war-based movies, and even though Wonder Woman definitely did have some cool moments in there, for example, that wicked sequence where she's walking in no man's land, I just feel like overall the movie just is not as great as everyone thinks it is. Next, I'm going to put another one that's probably going to surprise quite a few people in terms of how low it is, which is going to be Man of Steel. So I also think this movie is so overrated, and I personally just did not enjoy it as much as Zack Snyder superfans seem to absolutely love this film. Now, Henry Cavill is definitely brilliantly casted as Clark Kent and Superman, and I feel like all of his sequences were really, really good, but unfortunately the writing and the creation of this movie just was not done in as good of a way as I think it could have been. For example, the fight between him and Zod just went on forever. There were quite a few boring moments. Amy Adams always felt miscast as Lois Lane, and I don't think they had that good of an on-screen relationship. And I think going down the darker tone with this character, for all of the reasons that we now know why they did do that, I think is interesting, but I think the execution overall just was not that great. So now we're in the top 10. So in at number 10, I'm going to put Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. So I think this is a really funny movie to end the complete DCEU with, especially as they ended it on a bit of a joke in terms of Orm eating that cockroach. And whilst this movie definitely did have its own flaws in terms of all of the mixed tonality as well, and certain moments were a little bit cringe, I think you can enjoy this movie for what it is. And I loved all of the buddy cop moments between Aquaman and Ocean Master Orm as his brother, as I feel like the two of them just worked together so well. And you can just tell that Jason Momoa is just having the time of his life making this movie, and in turn, I feel like the audience can really enjoy it too. Next, I'm going to put the Suicide Squad. So I think this movie is really, really cool, especially as at first it feels very James Gunn. And I think he always just does such a good job in terms of bringing C and D list characters to the forefront and making them really, really popular. And I think all of the new characters, for example, Ratcatcher, Starro, Peacemaker, were all coming to life in a really cool way, and I just think it's a really great entry for the DC Extended Universe. Next, I'm going to put the $1 billion entry, so I'm going to put Aquaman here. So this was a true cinematic movie. When you're watching it, as I feel like Atlantis just came to life in such a cool way. And I just think it was really, really epic, really, really brilliant. All of the characterizations were done really, really cool. All of the superhero moments were done really, really well. And I feel like they really quickly told his origin storyline. And I feel like all of the battles between him and Ocean Master are really, really wicked, along with Black Manta. And I just feel like as a trio, those three characters were just realised really, really well. Did it deserve to make $1 billion? I don't think so, but it definitely did show that Jason Momoa is a true superstar, and I just feel like he delivered totally as Aquaman. Next, I'm going to put Black Adam, so I think is really interesting all of the things that went on behind the scenes in terms of Dwayne Johnson having a vision for the rest of the DCEU, and then actually the guys at the top of Warner Brothers actually went behind his back and then went with James Gunn's vision instead, which is just such a shame. But you know, this movie, even though it felt like a true Dwayne Johnson movie, he did the impossible in terms of bringing back Henry Cavill's Superman for a brilliant sequence right at the end. And you can just tell that he just really wanted to fight Superman. You have to respect him for that. I mean, even in the comic books and in the animation, that does somewhat happen, even though Shazam is definitely in the mix too. And I think, you know, this movie did have a cool story arc. Yes, it wasn't perfect, but I think it was severely underrated. And I personally had a really, really good time with this movie. Next, I'm going to put his counterpart, Shazam. So I think this movie kind of came out of nowhere when it first came out, as it was just super enjoyable, and I think all of the characters were just coming together so well. And I love the fact that, you know, they were really bringing this foster family together. They really stole the audience's hearts, and I think when they transformed into the superheroes right at the end, it was just such a nice full circle moment. I know a lot of people are always criticizing Zachary Levi's version of Shazam being nothing like Asher Angel's version of Billy Batson, which I think is really, really funny, but I just think it was a really cool movie. It had some hilarious sequences, and it was just one that was able to be enjoyed by the whole family. And I just think that end sequence, in terms of bringing the headless Superman cameo that Henry Cavill rejected to be a part of, will always go down as being one of the most hilarious cinematic moments ever. So now we're in the top 5. So at number 5, I'm going to put Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. So this is a truly underrated movie, as it's just so good. I mean, I know Superman, from a powers perspective, is able to own Batman any day of the week, and I feel like kryptonite has just been used so much across TV, animation, and films and video games in terms of being the way that you depower Superman. And I just think people need to be a bit more creative, as I'm sure you can take down Superman in other ways. But anyway, even though, you know, they are not really a match for each other, because of the fact that they used kryptonite, Batman was actually able to depower Superman, and there were just some really cool sequences here. For example, I think Henry Cavill versus Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne versus Clark Kent was so good. And then you throw Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor in there, and I just feel like, you know, from a human's perspective, these characters are really, really good. And if you watch the Ultimate Edition of this movie, it actually narratively just works so much better than the actual theatrical release version. Now, I do agree that Doomsday was an absolute joke, but apart from that, I do actually think that this movie is really, really good. In at number 4, I'm going to put Blue Beetle. Now, I know a lot of people wrote this movie off for, you know, being very 90s and just not being that great, but I personally thought it was really, really good. I think the Riaz family were absolutely adorable. I think they were just so believable as well, and they were just so supportive of their son. And I just think, you know, all of those family moments were really, really nice. The family Blue Beetle moments were really, really nice. The death that took place was just so shocking and heartbreaking. And I just think from an origin storyline perspective, because of the fact that this character isn't that well known, I think they did do a really, really good job. And I think the CGI was realized really, really well. I think the villain was really, really cartoony. And I just think it was a really well-paced movie from start to finish. And I'm so glad that actually they're keeping the team from Blue Beetle in the new DC universe, and I just cannot wait to see how all of that is going to go down, as I now love the Blue Beetle character, and I just think his power set is really, really wicked. Now we're in the top 3, so we're at number 3, I'm going to put The Flash. So I know this movie got absolutely slated when it got released, and all of the Ezra Miller drama aside, I do actually think from a narrative perspective, it is really, really interesting. And I know that the original plan was then to properly do the Flashpoint universe storyline after this movie, and I think if they had done that, this movie would be even more recognized and even more highly regarded. Now, like I said, I know it's got its flaws, for example, the really questionable CGIs, bringing back certain passed away characters and all of that kind of stuff, but I really did love all of the Back to the Future aspects of traveling to the past, of all of the Batman scenario sequences. I think bringing back Michael Keaton's Batman in this universe was really, really cool, and also to have Supergirl in here instead of Superman. I think all of that stuff was actually really interesting, and I just think it worked really, really well. In at number 2, I'm going to put a really surprising one. So my second favourite movie from the DC Extended Universe is actually going to be Shazam! Fury of the Gods. So I think this movie is criminally underrated. As I have to say, I think it's so good. I think all of the human-based storylines are really, really good. All of these gods that are now descending onto this planet, trying to get the staff and just cause absolute chaos, was a real threat. All of the Shazam family moments are really, really good. For example, the fact that Freddy has now got the powers that he has dreamed of and now just wants to do his own thing. The fact that he then gets caught, and then all of the stuff with Zachary Levi's Billy Batson character trying to be a leader, but still learning how to be a leader. All of the sacrifices that he makes. I feel like all of it was actually really, really good. And it had some wicked sequences. The CGI looked super believable, and I think all of the fight sequences as well were just really, really chilling, truly end of the world type stuff. And like I said, I just think it worked so well as a movie, and I just think it's so criminally underrated. But the best DC Extended Universe movie, you guessed it, is of course Zack Snyder's Justice League. The Snyder Cut was just truly epic, and I think it was just so nice to have justice deserved, no pun intended, because of the fact that, you know, his movie was completed by another director. It was only right that he was able to complete it and release it. And I just think, like I said, the end product was so good. I think breaking up into chapters was really, really brilliant. It was really, really dark, but it just tied into the mythology of the DC comics so well. And I just think having Steppenwolf and Darkseid as the big evil villains were a true threat to all of these meta-humans. And not only did it feel very Zack Snyder, I just think the end product was just such a good example of how the DC Extended Universe could have been if there was just a lot more love and care with all of the creation of all of the movies. But anyway, we are now done with the DC Extended Universe, and we are now going to be transitioning into the DC Universe. So I just cannot wait to see what James Gunn's vision is going to be when we finally do get to see the DC Universe. I'm genuinely really, really excited to see what James Gunn's vision is going to be for the DCU, and I'm really hopeful, to use Loki's word, that it's going to be really, really glorious. But now I'd love to hear from you. What is your ranking for the DC Extended Universe? Let us know in the comment section below, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.